Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight. As always, these videos are based on your suggestions for monsters that you'd like to see me draw and talk about the lore of that you leave down in the comment section below. So if you have a monster you'd like to see me draw, make sure to leave that down in the comment section, because I've had such trouble trying to choose which monsters that I'd like to draw next. I've decided to leave that up to my patrons over on Patreon, so if you'd like to vote and help me choose which monsters I'll be drawing next month, and to help me make videos like this every single week, head over to my Patreon page. I'll leave a link to that down in the description box. This creature was first suggested by Daedric Wolf 77 in the YouTube comments, and they would like to see the Demogorgon. So, let's get started with today's video.
The Prince of Demons, the sibilant beast, master of the spiraling depths. To know Demogorgon is to know the face of insanity, made flesh.
For many of you, Stranger Things may have been your first introduction, the first time you've heard of Demogorgon or the Demogorgon, where it features as a roughly human-sized creature from an alternate dimension called the Upside Down, and whose head opens like a blooming flower, a gross as hell blooming flower, filled with teeth. And that was certainly my first encounter with this beast, or at least I thought. In hindsight, the Demogorgon featured in a campaign I played when I was younger, but our party never really learned the creature's name, we just knew it as a threat. Contrary to its appearance in Stranger Things, D&D's Demogorgon couldn't be much more different. So rather than a kind of 6 to 7 foot kind of basketball player sized Demogorgon, in D&D, Demogorgon has kind of varied in height quite a lot. In 5th edition, we know it as a huge fiend. That gives us a size bracket that could put this thing at about 35 feet tall, which makes it the height of 2 adult giraffes stood on top of each other, 5 Andre the Giants, or Shaquille O'Neals, or 7 Danny DeVitos stacked on top of each other's shoulders. In older versions of D&D, we're told that this monster is 18 feet tall, but in 5th edition, we're just given huge as a kind of size bracket, which is a really broad scale, which ends in the mid-30s in terms of feet. But in some editions we're told that this monster is gargantuan in size, which could be up to 64 feet in height. So I'm going to stick with a nice safe middle ground and go for 35. In terms of what it looks like, it's hard to describe. 5th edition's Tome of Foes, which is where we are introduced in this edition to Demogorgon, has a great description. We are told that the Demon Lord is a meld of different forms, with a saurian lower body and clawed webbed feet, as well as suckered tentacles sprouting from the shoulders of a great ape-like torso surmounted by 2 hideous simian heads, named Asmaul and Hathridar, both equally mad. Their gaze brings madness and confusion to any who confront it. It's so grand, enormous, so weird and insane looking that it's said to even drive those who look upon it to go insane. The cultists who follow and worship this being have a Y-shaped kind of spiraling design that apparently is also capable of making you go insane just from looking at this logo. So there you go, graphic designers, you have the power to make people go insane without having to use Comic Sans or Papyrus as a font. And madness is the word of the day when it comes to Demogorgon. It's a creature that exudes insanity. It is the master of madness. If you've ever played the Elder Scrolls games and have had the misfortune or perhaps fortune to encounter Sheogorath, then we're dealing with the same kind of character, only in the form of a giant kind of Godzilla-like monstrosity. It generates this kind of region, this aura of insanity around it, and its reach extends for miles and miles around wherever it seems to make its home. We're told that an area within 6 miles of the lair of the Demogorgon becomes overpopulated with lizards and poisonous snakes and other venomous beasts, all wriggling and writhing out of the mud and dirt, leading great hordes like the Pied Piper is calling for a legion of serpents. Additionally, beasts within 1 mile of the lair become violent and crazed, even creatures that are normally docile. So if your party are trying to ride towards this thing on their steeds, they might find that they are bucked off the back of their mounts and trampled as their otherwise valiant steeds turn on them and become crazed. And we're told that it's not just beasts that are affected by this, Humanoids that spend an hour or more within a 1 mile radius of the lair of a Demogorgon can also be driven completely insane. If they fail a wisdom saving throw, then they are forced to roll on a special madness table specific to the Demogorgon. And the effects of this madness table are permanent unless they are cured through powerful sorcery. You might believe that anyone is plotting to kill you, and you need to strike first to stop them, perhaps causing dissent and mutiny within your own party. You might find your efforts futile, and the only way to cure your madness or to defeat the Demogorgon, to rid yourself of this sickly insanity, is to kill everything around you, including friends, foes, plants and animals. You may want to set it all ablaze. You might develop a split personality as another mind enters your head. Maybe it's friend, maybe it's foe, but it becomes awful claustrophobic inside your own skull. Perhaps your temper inflames. You realize that if people don't agree with you, you need to beat them into submission in order to get your way. Or perhaps you just become insanely avaricious, extremely protective, and suspicious of everyone around you. You won't allow anyone to touch anything that belongs to you because you fear that they might try and steal things from you. So what actually is Demogorgon? Well, I mentioned in the intro that they're the prince of demons, but the name Demogorgon refers to a deity or demon from pagan mythology, supposedly, and later in Christianity. Even the name is said to be taboo amongst Christians, so foul is this dreaded beast in mythology. Initially, the name was ascribed to originate from Greek mythological stories, where it is interpreted as demos, meaning people, and gorgon, referring to the Gorgon, creatures like Medusa and things like that in Greek legends, horrible monstrosities. And as a result, it was feared and reviled, an ancient monster from antiquity. The reality, however, is that the name is most likely a mistranslation by Christian scholars of the word demiurge from these ancient texts. This word demiurge is supposedly mistranslated from a 4th century scholar named Lecantius Placidus, who wrote of demiurges, where the word appears as demogorgon. Art historian Jean Sesnak poetically puts the fumble as a grammatical error become God. The word demiurge itself is more like an artisan or a craftsperson who fashions the physical universe in Gnostic traditions. And it's a word that's long since faded into obscurity, as with a lot of other Gnostic writings. These sort of ancient, sort of early Christian, or otherwise Abrahamic kind of writings. Importantly, in these ancient traditions, a demiurge isn't a creator in the same way that a Judeo-Christian might refer to a creator god, but rather tends to be referred to as someone who molds or crafts or takes care of reality with matter and materials provided after the universe is initially spawned. They are the carpenter that builds the chair, but not the arborist who plants the seed to grow a tree, to make the lumber to provide materials for said chair. It's in this understanding that I think we see the first influence of the D&D Demogorgon's appearance. The Othite Christian Gnostics depicted a lion-faced deity called Yaldabaoth, Yaldabaoth, who had a kind of lumpy serpent-like body and was apparently the Archon or ruler. He is the demiurge known to be the maker of man, who is envious of his creation, for as he crafts them, they are filled with souls from a ray of light above him, according to a 2nd century text called the Apocryphon of John. Here Yaldabaoth is known also by the name Saklas, or Fool, and later also Samael, who becomes redefined as the accuser, seducer, and destroyer, an angel or perhaps devil, depending on where you look. In this text, he claims, "I am God, and there is no other God besides me, for he is ignorant of his strength." So obviously, perhaps a bit arrogant. And it's at this point that he becomes a god of the underworld of sorts, and this is probably why Demogorgon is also considered a demon of the underworld in Christian legends, and subsequently why Demogorgon in D&D built its palace, its divine, insane home that I imagine looks like a wandering tower constructed by MC Escher that resides in its own slice of the plane called the Abyss. The Abyss in D&D is the birthplace of demons and is a chaotic evil universe with innumerable layers, all of which stretch out to infinity. A place where only strength, mastery, and cunning allows people to survive, where brutal dominance rather than compassion are the only virtues. The landscape itself is a twisted, barbaric remnant of its many battles and conquests, its many sieges, its pockmarked land, evidence of hundreds, if not thousands, of battles, once great monuments, mountains, and landmarks crushed and crumbled into entropic dust under the boot of an infinite war. In one of these many infinite layers of the abyss, known as the Gaping Maw, the Demogorgon makes its lair, where a sea of turmoil lays as both a placid lake and a raging rapid, all at the same time. Erupting peacefully from this churning moat are one or perhaps two serpentine towers, each crowned by skulls. There the Demogorgon rests, complacent and agitated, fidgeting peacefully, where it can peacefully rage and contemplate the mysteries of the Arcane. This great tower coils under the depths of the water into the inky black and ever-freezing water, a place where the Demogorgon can calmly and agitatingly pace through its many massive halls, constantly wandering, scheming and plotting plans and schemes, perhaps hundreds or thousands of years in the making. The subtle nuances of its plans may even be lost on the two heads of the Demogorgon, so long as it had been scheming. It's important to remember that if you were to ever meet the Demogorgon, it's not unthinkable to believe that part of its plan may be for you to encounter it and perhaps even kill it. Whatever insane wanderings this creature may have had, with infinity on its side, with an inability to die, a constant plane of writhing chaos to dwell in, it may be impossible to counteract its many plans. I imagine the tower that the Demogorgon dwells within, much like the Winchester Mystery House. For those who don't know, the Winchester Mystery House is a mansion in San Jose, California. It was once the personal residence of Sarah Winchester, the widow of William Winchester, the person whose company created the Winchester Repeater firearms company. Once her husband passed, Sarah Winchester became distraught, plagued by the concept that all of the people that her husband's guns may have killed will haunt her and perhaps kill her, and she was advised that the only way to stop them from killing her is to consistently build into the house, to never have the house finished. Upon the house's completion, she would instantly die. So she built stairways that lead to nothing, rooms built on top of rooms, constantly redecorated, adding corridors that lead to nowhere, rooms that have no function, rooms within rooms. And so too I imagine Demogorgon's home constantly shifting, its edifices and cornice, its decorations, its walls and spires constantly replaced by new and ever more maddening constructions, gates and walls that lead to nowhere, stairways where gravity reverses, perhaps archways that teleport you from one place to another, windows that groan like great open mouths, which stretch further and further away from you the closer you try to reach them, all still showing the outside and potential freedom. I imagine it as a place where people could become lost and wander for all eternity, not allowed to die or to age, but just to have their hope and sanity drained from them as they wander its endless echoing halls. Whilst within its spiraling lair, the Demogorgon can use lair actions that occur on initiative count 20. The Demogorgon can create a perfect illusory duplicate of itself that appears in its own space and lasts until next round, wherein I imagine this hideous creature ends up looking like it's vibrating and shifting like a displacer beast. It moves with the Demogorgon if it so chooses, and if so, a creature that tries to strike the Demogorgon has a 50% chance of instead hitting the illusory duplicate instead. If it grows tired of this game, Demogorgon instead can cast the Darkness spell 4 times at its lowest level, targeting different areas with the spell. And this spell is not something that the Demogorgon needs to concentrate on. In its twisting, insane mind, there is a fragment of concentration somewhere deep within it, but it thrives on chaos instead. Whilst those strange and mind-warping lair actions are going on, players also have the following things to contend with when fighting the Demogorgon. Its natural saurian, scaly hide grants it 22 armor class, and it has 28 d12 plus 224 hit points. It moves at 50 feet per round, whether it's walking or swimming. and although its gargantuan size reduces its dexterity to its lowest stat, it still finds that it has a +2 index, but its most potent stat is perhaps its strength at +9, its constitution at +8, or its charisma at +7. Being demonic in nature, it's resistant to fire damage, but also cold and lightning. Non-magical weapons absolutely cannot hurt it, and it can't be poisoned. It also can't be charmed or exhausted or frightened. And between one of its two heads, it has true sight up to 120 feet. It speaks all languages and is telepathic up to that same range. At will, it can detect magic and cast major image. 3 times a day, it can dispel magic, cast fear, or use telekinesis. And once a day, it can use feeble mind or project image. Just like a lot of other enormous, terrifying demonic creatures in D&D, it has a legendary resistance that it can use 3 times a day, allowing it to choose to succeed on a saving throw 3 times a day. But if it doesn't choose to, it still has advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. Also, because it has 2 heads, it has advantage on saving throws against being blinded, deafened, stunned, or knocked unconscious. On its turn, it can slap people with those enormous tentacles protruding from its shoulders with a +17 to hit, wherein a target takes 3d12 +9 bludgeoning damage, and if it then fails a constitution saving throw, its hit point maximum is reduced by the damage of the attack. And there's nothing that can really be done about this, save for a long rest. Additionally, if the creature's hit point maximum is reduced to 0 through one of these attacks, then it just dies. It doesn't get to make life and death saving throws or anything like that. It's important to note that the Demogorgon gets to make 2 of these per turn as well. It also has a very strange gaze attack, where one of its 2 heads stare at someone within 120 feet of it. Whoever's soul is being pierced by the eyes of the Demogorgon needs to make a wisdom saving throw. The creature can choose to automatically pass this by closing their eyes and averting their gaze, but they have to keep their eyes closed until the start of their next turn, immediately having to make the save if they choose to reopen their eyes. If they fail the save, they then suffer one of 3 effects, which the Demogorgon can choose, or, in the spirit of being a Demogorgon, and embracing insanity and chaos, they can also roll a d3 and pick one at random. The creature can become beguiled, freezing in place until the start of next turn, or until Demogorgon is no longer within line of sight. It can hypnotize someone, allowing the Demogorgon to choose what this creature does with all of its actions and reactions. But this one is so potent that it requires both heads of the Demogorgon to stare at them, which means that it doesn't get to do any of its legendary actions, which I'll talk about in just a second. Or it can cast Confusion, the spell, on somebody without having to concentrate on it, and it automatically forces the person to fail the saving throw of that spell, driving them slowly mad. Now, the Demogorgon gets 2 legendary actions. I mentioned a little bit about this a second ago, but one of those is Maddening Gaze. It can use one of its 2 legendary actions at the end of somebody else's turn to turn one of its heads and cast the Beguiling or Insanity Gaze effect on somebody. Importantly, it can't do the Hypnosis one. Or it can strike someone with its tail, something which I totally forgot to draw on this creature. It has a large serpentine tail, but it's a truly horrible attack. Just like its tentacles, it's a 17 to hit, and deals 2d10 +9 bludgeoning damage with an additional 2d10 necrotic damage on top of that. So this creature is an absolute monster to fight, and truly worthy of its title as the Prince of Demons. I kind of imagine this creature, with its chaotic evil alignment, operating a bit more like Heath Ledger's Joker than a mastermind, but underneath there is always a plan. A plan that maybe it can't quite decipher, but it knows that it's its plan, and that after centuries of plotting, it's guaranteed to succeed. In that same sense, my drawing was hugely influenced by my interpretations of what an insanity demon might look like, and my main influence for this, other than the bizarre and truly unique descriptions of Demogorgon itself in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, was that of the Warhammer greater demon Tzeentch, a similar bizarre and chaotic deity, a demon of arcane knowledge, of mutation, of randomness, of incomprehensibility. Also, it has a really nice colour palette, so I chose to use something along those lines as well. It's kind of blues and yellows and whites, as opposed to the Demogorgon, which is traditionally sort of depicted as sort of brown and yellow and green. But you guys know how much I prefer colourful things to the sort of sepia brown and umbral tones that are usually used in sort of older fantasy art. So I hope you enjoyed this drawing as much as I enjoyed researching it and creating it as well. I've never personally used Demogorgon in any of my games, but I can't wait to get the chance to do so. Such a fabled and iconic creature has been around since the earliest editions of D&D, an embodiment of insanity that you get to fight. But anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I hope you'll leave a little like down below and maybe favourite this video. Perhaps share it with your friends if you want to drive them mad, and also to help to support this channel. I know it doesn't sound like much, but all those shares, likes and comments really help to establish this channel, so thank you so much for your help if you choose to do that. If you want to see more videos like this, I make 2 videos a week, one on a Monday and one on a Friday, so make sure to subscribe and hit the little bell icon as well to stay notified when I upload videos. If you want to support me in a more personal way, have a hand in choosing what Monster Mondays I do next, receive illustrations like this one of every Monster Monday that I do each month, get access to exclusive live streams, and also have personal one-on-one chats with me, I'd urge you to head over to my Patreon page, where backers at various different levels get tons of different rewards, and hopefully we can get to know each other a little bit better as we build this community. So thank you very much if you do choose to go over to Patreon. Otherwise guys, I hope you have an absolutely insane day. Thank you for watching, and happy monster hunting.